I found out my marriage was built on a lie because I was trying to order takeout. That sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly how it happened. My wife had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she showered. We shared devices all the time. There were no passwords, no secret accounts, no suspicious behavior that would make me think twice. At least that's what I believed. I was looking for the restaurant's email confirmation when a notification appeared in the corner of the screen. "I miss hearing your voice." I wasn't trying to snoop. I almost looked away. Then I saw the sender's name. My stomach dropped. Because it was the name of a man my wife had sworn she didn't know. Not once. Not twice. For years. The worst part is that before that moment, I would have described our marriage as boring in the best possible way. We had been together for over a decade. A house. 2 kids. Weekend grocery trips. Arguments about laundry and bills. Nothing dramatic. Nothing exciting. Just life. And I thought life was good. Looking back now, I realize the collapse started long before that message appeared. I just didn't know I was standing inside the ruins yet. The name in that notification wasn't unfamiliar. It was Daniel. The same Daniel my wife had laughed about years earlier when his name came up at a neighborhood barbecue. One of our friends had asked if she knew him from college. She immediately shook her head. "Never met him in my life." The answer came so quickly that nobody questioned it. Neither did I. At the time, there was no reason to. My wife had always seemed trustworthy. She remembered birthdays, checked on sick relatives, and spent hours helping our children with homework. She was the last person I imagined hiding something serious. But after seeing that message, memories started rearranging themselves. Little things. Moments I had dismissed. She occasionally stepped outside to take phone calls. She became strangely protective of her phone around 3 years earlier. Nothing extreme. Just enough that if I reached for it, she'd casually grab it first. I never considered it suspicious because I trusted her completely. Trust can be dangerous that way. It fills in missing pieces with comforting explanations. And when you love someone deeply, you become incredibly skilled at ignoring red flags. I certainly was. I wish I could say I closed the laptop and waited for an explanation. I didn't. The second the bathroom water started running, I opened the message. Then another. And another. Within seconds my hands were shaking. The conversation stretched back for years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. There were thousands of messages. Inside jokes. Arguments. Apologies. Photos. Voice notes. Memories they had built together while I thought my wife and I were building a life together. What hit me hardest wasn't even the romantic messages. It was how familiar they sounded. She talked to him the way she used to talk to me. The same affection. The same teasing. The same warmth. At one point he wrote, "Do you ever regret choosing him?" I stared at the screen. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. A minute later she replied, "Every day is complicated." Not, "No." Not, "I love my husband." Not, "Stop asking." Just that. Every day is complicated. I must have read those 4 words 20 times. Because somewhere inside me, I already knew my life was about to split into 2 versions. The one before I read them. And the one after. The deeper I went into their messages, the worse it became. I kept hoping I would find proof that I was misunderstanding everything. Maybe they were old friends. Maybe there was some innocent explanation. Instead, I found evidence that they had known each other long before my wife and I met. That was impossible. Or at least it should have been. Years earlier, during a random conversation, I had specifically asked her about past relationships. Nothing dramatic. Just one of those late-night talks couples have. She told me there had only been a few serious relationships before me. No Daniel. Not even a mention. Yet here they were discussing memories from their early 20s. Trips. Apartments. Arguments. Shared dreams. An entire history she had erased from the version of herself she gave me. Then I found a message that made my chest tighten. Daniel had written, "Do you think he'll ever find out what really happened?" My wife answered almost immediately, "No. There's no reason for him to know now." I stopped breathing for a second. Because suddenly this didn't feel like an affair. It felt like a secret. A very old secret. And somehow, I was at the center of it without even knowing. I heard the shower turn off and barely managed to close the laptop before she walked back into the kitchen. For a few seconds, I just stood there pretending to scroll through my phone. My entire body felt numb. She smiled at me. A completely normal smile. The same smile I had seen almost every day for years. "Did you order dinner?" she asked. I looked at her and wondered how many lies could fit behind a familiar face. "Not yet," I said. My voice sounded strange even to me. That evening was torture. We ate with the kids. Helped them finish homework. Watched television. Everything looked normal from the outside. Inside, I felt like I was watching a stranger perform the role of my wife. I barely slept that night. Around 2 in the morning, while she was asleep beside me, I replayed every message in my head. Especially one sentence. "There's no reason for him to know now." Now. That word haunted me. Because it implied there had once been a reason. Something had happened. Something important enough to hide for years. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering whether my wife was lying. I was wondering what else she had buried. The next day, I did something I had never done before. I lied to my wife. I told her I had a late meeting after work. Instead, I sat alone in my car in a supermarket parking lot and read through every message I had secretly copied to myself the night before. I needed answers. What I found only made things worse. The affair wasn't recent. In fact, it seemed to have restarted several times over the years. Long periods of silence. Then sudden bursts of intense communication. As if either of them could completely let go. But buried among those conversations was something far more disturbing. Daniel kept referring to a specific date. The date my wife and I got engaged. One message read, "I still can't believe you married him 6 months after what happened." Another said, "You chose the safe life." I stared at those words for a long time. The safe life. Was that me? Just the safe option. The dependable husband? The backup plan? The realization hurt more than I expected. Because betrayal is one thing. Feeling like someone else's second choice is something entirely different. And I was beginning to fear that was exactly what I had been all along. 3 days later, I couldn't take it anymore. The uncertainty was destroying me. That evening, after the kids went upstairs, I sat across from my wife at the kitchen table. My hands were trembling. "Who is Daniel?" The color drained from her face instantly. I noticed it before she said a single word. That reaction told me more than any explanation could. "What do you mean?" she asked. It was a terrible answer. The kind people give when they're buying time. I repeated the question. This time more quietly. "Who is Daniel?" For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Where did you hear that name?" "Not I don't know him." "Not you're mistaken." "Just fear. Raw fear." I told her about the message. The laptop. The conversation. Everything. The moment she realized what I had seen, she started crying. Not loud, dramatic crying. The kind that comes from someone whose worst nightmare has finally arrived. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she said. "Find out what?" I remember asking that question. And I remember the silence that followed. Because she wasn't deciding whether to tell the truth anymore. She was deciding how much of it I could survive hearing. When she finally spoke, her voice barely sounded like her own. "Daniel and I were together before I met you." I already knew that much. The messages had made it obvious. "What else?" I asked. She looked down at the table. For a moment I thought she might refuse to answer. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. We were engaged. I just stared at her. Engaged. Not a casual boyfriend. Not a college fling. The man she claimed she had never met was someone she had once planned to marry. I felt anger rising so fast it almost made me dizzy. Why would you lie about that? Tears rolled down her face. Because of how it ended. I demanded an explanation. She hesitated again. Then she told me Daniel had cheated on her. Repeatedly. Their relationship collapsed. Her family hated him. Her friends hated him. Everyone pushed her to cut him out of her life completely. Eventually she met me. A stable, kind man who offered something different. As she spoke, I realized she wasn't answering my real question. Not even close. Because none of that explained why she was still secretly talking to him after all these years. I asked her the question that had been burning inside me for days. Are you having an affair with him? She covered her face with both hands. That silence felt endless. Finally, she nodded. Just once. A tiny movement. But it hit me harder than if she had screamed it. I felt physically sick. I stood up so fast my chair nearly fell over. For years I had imagined how I might react if I were ever cheated on. Anger. Yelling. Maybe even throwing something. Instead, I just felt empty. Like all the air had been pulled from the room. When? I asked. How long? She started crying harder. Not continuously. I laughed. A horrible, bitter laugh. As if that somehow made it better. Then she admitted the truth. Their emotional relationship had never fully ended. The physical affair had happened several times over our marriage. The most recent time was less than a year earlier. I remember grabbing the edge of the counter because my legs suddenly felt weak. Everything I thought was solid had disappeared. And the worst part was that I still loved her. Even while hearing her destroy me, what happened next is still a blur. I spent hours asking questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Every answer seemed to create 3 new wounds. Had she ever loved me? Yes. Did she love him? Another silence. Then a quiet. Yes. That hurt more than the affair itself. Because suddenly our entire marriage felt crowded by a ghost I had never known existed. I asked whether Daniel knew about me. She nodded. Of course he did. He knew about our wedding. Our house. Our children. He knew everything. Yet he stayed in her life anyway. At some point I asked the question I had been avoiding. Did you ever think about leaving me? My wife started crying again. More than once. I felt something break inside me. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just a slow crack spreading through every memory we shared. Birthdays. Vacations. Family photos. The birth of our children. I suddenly wondered which moments had been real and which moments had been performed. By midnight we were sitting in opposite corners of the living room. 2 strangers surrounded by the remains of a marriage neither of us fully recognized anymore. The days that followed were worse than the discovery itself. At first, I thought knowing the truth would bring clarity. Instead, it brought chaos. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus at work. I'd walk into rooms and forget why I was there. Every quiet moment turned into another interrogation inside my own head. My wife slept in the guest room. The kids noticed the tension immediately. Children always do. They started asking why Mom seemed sad. Why Dad looked angry all the time. We lied. We told them we were stressed. Busy. Tired. Anything except the truth. Meanwhile, relatives began getting involved. My wife confessed to her parents. Then mine found out. Suddenly our private disaster became a family event. Everyone had an opinion. Some told me to leave immediately. Others insisted marriages survive worse things. A few people seemed more concerned about appearances than what had actually happened. Through all of it, I felt trapped. I loved my children. I loved the life we had built. But every time I looked at my wife, I saw those messages. Those years of deception. And I had no idea how anyone was supposed to come back from that. A month after the confrontation, I learned there was still more. At that point, I honestly believed nothing could shock me anymore. I was wrong. We had started seeing a marriage counselor. Most sessions were painful but predictable. Then one evening my wife admitted something she had hidden even during our first brutal conversations. She said there was a period, years earlier, when she wasn't sure who she wanted to be with. Me or Daniel. I remember staring at her, waiting for the rest. It got worse. During that period, she had secretly met him several times. Not just messages. Not just phone calls. Actual meetings. Coffee shops. Hotels. Long drives. The kind of encounters that require planning and deliberate deception. What changed? I asked. She looked exhausted. Daniel didn't want a family. That answer haunted me. Because it meant she hadn't chosen me purely out of love. At least not entirely. Part of her decision had been practical. I represented stability. Commitment. A future. I went home after that session and sat in my car for nearly an hour. For the first time, I seriously considered divorce. Not out of anger. Out of exhaustion. When I finally told my wife I was thinking about divorce, she looked like she had been expecting it for weeks. Maybe she had. Maybe anyone in her position would have. She didn't argue at first. She just cried. Quietly. The kind of crying that comes when someone realizes consequences are no longer theoretical. For years, she had managed to keep two versions of her life separate. Now both had collided. "I'll do anything," she told me. Anything. People say that word a lot during a crisis. But there are some things that can't be fixed through effort alone. Trust is one of them. I asked her if she had completely cut contact with Daniel. She showed me blocked numbers. Deleted accounts. Unread messages she claimed she never answered. I wanted to believe her. Part of me desperately wanted to. But trust doesn't return because evidence appears. Trust returns because the mind feels safe again. And mine didn't. Every time her phone buzzed, I noticed. Every time she was late, I noticed. Every unexplained detail became suspicious. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize. Not because I was controlling. Because betrayal had rewired the way I saw everything. In the end, we didn't separate immediately. A lot of people assume there's a single dramatic moment when a marriage ends. For us, it was slower than that. More painful. We kept trying. Therapy. Long conversations. Rules about transparency. Promises. Apologies. For nearly a year, we lived in a strange middle ground between marriage and separation. Some days felt hopeful. We would laugh together, cook dinner, help the kids with school projects, and for a few hours everything felt almost normal. Then a memory would surface. A date. A message. A detail from one of her confessions. And suddenly I was back at the beginning. Back at that laptop. Back at that notification. Back at the realization that the woman I trusted most had been living a second emotional life. Eventually I understood something difficult. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. I had started forgiving her. At least partially. But trust never returned. Not completely. Not even close. By the time we decided to legally separate, there wasn't much fighting left. Just sadness. Years of sadness compressed into a single decision neither of us could avoid anymore. It's been 3 years since the separation. We're civil now. We co-parent. We attend school events together. From the outside, people probably think we handled everything maturely. Maybe we did. But there are scars that never become visible. I still think about that message sometimes. "I miss hearing your voice." Such an ordinary sentence. A sentence that quietly detonated an entire life. The strange thing is that I don't hate my ex-wife anymore. For a long time I wanted to. It would have been easier. Hatred creates distance. The truth is more complicated. I think she loved me. I also think she never fully let go of the man she loved before me. Those two things existed at the same time, and our marriage was crushed between them. The lesson I carry isn't that people are evil. It's that secrets grow. They change shape. They become heavier every year they're hidden. Eventually they demand to be discovered. And when they are, the damage isn't limited to the people keeping them. Everyone nearby gets hit by the collapse. I still trust people. But I no longer confuse trust with certainty. I learned that the hard way.